I'm Summer Phillips, and I've also never gotten up and spoken at one of these things before, so a little bit nervous. I'm a first year creative writing student at the University of Kingston in London. And my focus is on exploring perceptions of animals and how thoughts and behaviours can create alternate worlds. I hope you find this, you'll probably find it a bit different from what's gone before. I'm a very down-to-earth kind of person. And since before returning to university and still now, I feel quite a barrier with academic language. I find this quite a difficulty. My brain doesn't seem to process it very well. A lot of it goes right over my head. But that makes me push even harder, because I think one of my aims is also to encourage people to feel they've got a massive contribution and to reassure them that academia won't alienate them. So, I'm going to start. What do I do to move it forward? Does it click?
Yeah.
I'm going to start with a little poem I wrote, and this might give you a little bit of an idea of where I'm coming from. This is my poem from Africa. A chimpanzee in its hiding tree, it's hiding precisely because of me, as I tramp through the forest, observing its moves in case I get published tomorrow's news. From the moment it wakes, I stalk and stare, yet ethical reasons are why I am there. Throughout its day, no solitude, unless it gives me the slip, how rude. It shields its baby from my intrusion, a camera flash causing fear and confusion. That's anthropomorphism, so I'm told. Talk of that, your career may well unfold. Don't say apes can feel things like we do, even though get this with primates too. We need to protect them, and research is best. We watch them eat, procreate, build their nests, we pick up their feces and analyse closely. As seed distributors, it really matters mostly to monitor a habitat, an ecosystem falling flat. Poachers will get them if we are not here. Mothers killed their babes, fond souvenirs. In a world where you'd hope all life mattered, many primates end up on serving platters. More in a mud hut built with no malice, so save your judgment of living in a comparable palace. If cows are endangered and your mouth longed to eat, you'd likely kill what you found in a heartbeat. Years being vegan, I can't say the same, and yes, as questioned before, I'd possibly die for my ethics, oh well, shame. So back to my tale of conservation, intrusive, deliberate infiltration, rain or shine, dawn or dusk, no space is your own, you're in somebody's trust. If I were an ape, would I love being hounded? Physically, mentally, emotionally pounded by people who think they are here to help me, and no one is able to just let me be. For reasons which might well be justified, it didn't stop me as I sat down and cried. For you see, I am an ape, with shared ancestry, and in a different world in that tree is me, seeing and feeling as I make my bed, camouflaging my figure and scratching my head. So I've loved stories all my life. I've always written, I've always loved dreaming things up, and this project evolved after that trip to Africa as part of my primatology masters. I wondered where all the wild animals were, and I also was struck by the limits we had placed on their evolution. I wanted to be a stronger voice, and are now engaging with the ethics of how to voice the predicament of vanishing and oppressed others. So my project is Millimetre, a symbiosis of art and science, using a multidisciplinary approach to ask key environmental questions arising from human perceptions and our subsequent behaviours. So I'm writing a series of 12 at the moment, probably more than that, science fiction stories based on perceptions and creations of world, exploring the topics of speciesism, altered ecologies, and using the backdrop of parallel universe theory, string theory, all those futuristic physics ideas as the medium to do that. The critical aspect, looking at how animal perceptions and relations are played out in science fiction and futuristic literature. Quite daunting when I realised the amount of stuff that I was going to have to read, and what reflection this has upon the ideologies of the similarities and differences between the human and the non-human, and also looking at how creative writing can explore and illuminate issues around speciesism, human behaviour towards the other. One of the drivers of the project was an aversion to human arrogance. You probably all know sort of Descartes and that sort of theory of animals as machines, of clocks and such. And I think that's an attitude which still prevails. So just a couple of nice quotes up there. Charles Darwin, the love for all living creatures is the most notable attribute of man. Jane Goodall, I'm sorry to pick out Jane Goodall after what you said yesterday, Kristen. I met her last year, so I've got, I love her. Researchers find it very necessary to keep blinkers on. They don't want to admit that the animals that they are working with have feelings. And Franz de Waal, if you don't know him, a primatologist well worth a read, coined the phrase anthropodenial, that if we don't know that animals don't have emotions, we should assume that they do. You know, turn it upside down. Are we open-minded enough to assume that other species have a mental life? Are we creative enough to investigate it? Other things that sort of drove me to the project, looking at sort of speciesism and the scale of importance of living things, always come up against this question of people that love animals, but I think what people say is that they love some animals. Robert Sapolsky, he's worth a look, neuroscientist and primatologist, if you haven't come across him. Very, very good theories about them and us and why we feel that we need to separate ourselves and categorize ourselves, not just from each other as humans, but from the whole of the animal kingdom. So looking at whether attitudes like this can be overcome. So, I've read quite a lot this year. And I found that quite a lot of the work that I've read leads to this sort of idea of the human being as a desired end product within science and speculative fiction. Species continue to be hierarchically categorized, animals often dress as humans, act as humans, to the point of, I've read things, if other species evolving from cats or from chimpanzees, you know, sit down and eat egg and bacon and play the violin, things I can't quite get my head around. Animals aspire to human culture and politics. Animals wish to please humans and are often voiced as childlike or human-centric. A couple of examples there. I've read a lot this year, so if you're really interested in this stuff, drop me an email and I can send you some titles of maybe what to read and what not to read. So for example, in Narnia we see a lot of speciesism. We've still got the donkey as a fool, the higher mammals talk. You don't find talking fish or insects or anything like that. Timothy, Life of a Country Snail, who seems very important, interested in what the people in the house are doing. Why that snail would be interested, I don't know. White Bone is about elephants and their spiritual experience, which sort of is akin to Buddhism. Figure that one. There are some really good examples of voicing the animal and that sort of what Van Uxhel, I might pronounce that wrong, that sort of umwelt, that animals in a world and seeing things from the animal without thinking about how we would see things from a human's perspective. So looking, for example, that we've got Nagel's paper about how to be like a bat, but there are authors looking at that with more of a sense of the animal, sort of the dog's sense of smell, bat's navigation skills. Some really nice works that I've just picked out there. Can Zhu, a book of short stories called Vertical Motion. There's a beautiful story in there about the experience of an earthworm or something similar to an earthworm. Grant's Parasite is about tapeworms, very interesting. And Travis's Westhart trilogy is more sort of what you'd call your traditional sort of science fiction, but there's a lot of themes about speciesism and veganism in there, which is really exciting. So, now you get to hear some of my stuff. So, one of my short stories that I'm working on now is called Sidestep, which is about a trip to a parallel universe from a world where most animals are extinct and the rest are hidden in food production units, which is maybe not such a big step away from the world we live in now. She couldn't see out, but she could hear animal sounds. A coo, was that a bird? A bark, a dog, wolf, monkey? She visualized the books and games they had played as kids sat in the high-rises. Then, what was that? Something of a cross between a bar and a ribbit. It was a beautiful chaos. So here we're sensing somebody going on safari with animals that we might be familiar with, which might well be gone. In Nora and the Sheep, I play with the idea of a world in which an event has caused humans to understand the inner minds of animals by direct experience. Species can shift into each other's consciousness. So here, Nora, as a human, experiences life as a sheep. Nora was roaming through the grasses, nibbling clover. She'd always found eating and moving at the same time quite tricky. There were others here, recognised by face, kin or friends, mischiefs and frauds. Her two daughters over there, headbutting each other playfully. She had no language for this, she just knew it. Then a memory of an awful commotion, maternal bleating, a bad day. She hadn't seen her mother after that. A flicker of human thought in her mind reminded her that flesh eating had stopped not long after the change in the world. Flesh eating. Did the sheep who were just sheep and had never shifted into humans know what happened to their young? They must know, mustn't they? And then we get the sheep as the human. On the other side of the flip, the sheep was intrigued. She crouched down with sensations of vertigo. This was life out of proportion. Too high up for one. How did these human things balance on just 2 legs? And why wasn't she hungry? She was always hungry. She stood again and moved her limbs. Were there more joints? She jumped in the air and ran across the meadow, kicking up her legs and tripping over the things on the end of them. Her laugh was awkward and breathy. She saw her species through another pair of eyes, but the comprehension was different. Wow, we all look similar, she laughed. But it just came out as a hiccup kind of bleat. A large bird shook itself out of a tree too close for comfort, and then there was a wetness between her lower limbs. In futuristic rabbits, we meet kids trying to survive in a world where a virus through cloned meat has killed most of the adults. The wild here is growing back, and the newly freed rabbit population is thriving. The crowd of teens walking by the old vacant city hall, holding placards saying the youth are the only future and freedom for all animals. Not much here but plants and fallen building facades. Solidarity, he shouted. Zoe turned down a different street, one of the few still being cleared of debris and broken glass so that the privileged few with cars and, more importantly, still with meds could get around without making themselves targets. A gang of rabbits hopped in front of the car. Zoe didn't swerve. What will you do if you can't make any newly resistant meds? Said Dylan, looking back. How long have you got before your time runs out? And does everyone under the age of 17 have a natural resistance to it? Was it just some of us lucky few? There was no reply. They continued down past the looted shops and bars in silence. 2 people lay at the edge of the street, surrounded by pigeons. Why aren't they clearing the bodies away, he asked. Not many left to do the clearing, said Zoe, as they turned the final corner to the lab, passing through the still ominous fences, towering over the wandering wildflowers. And to finish, I'm going to go back to poetry, which I tend to do just in my spare time, but might become a part of the project. I've not decided yet. This is one of a trilogy of zoo poems I wrote, called Zoopia. I try to tell you, you cannot hear, you lack the senses to. You move in different ways along another parallel. We once converged before paths split and roads were blocked. Before I knew space, time, adventure, I was chased and gave run myself. The horizontal and vertical were mine and ours. It would be like asking you to live in a large box. You have what you need to live, but not to thrive. I am Zoopia, renamed when I came here so my name fit in with today's trend. My picture chosen from the many as the one visitors would most respond to. I sit on a platform most of the day trying to avoid the brute they wish me to mate with. We are 12 here, not much room to escape. They don't leave him in here overnight, the others bite him once he is asleep. The other one was better, but he is gone, next door with the others. The faces peer in, robotic and leering, different motivations, same penetrative eyes. Their shiny steel skins glinting in the intermittent sunlight as they observe the animal called human. My research profile is there. Just take a snapshot of it if you need to, and if you want to get in touch, it'd be really nice to chat. I'm hoping there's no questions, because I'm terrified. But in very plain English, please. No?
Have you, the stories, are they complete?
I've got about 4 that are in first draft complete.
Okay. And the ones you've read, are they?
They're the ones that, yeah.
Yeah, they're so compelling for the reading.
Thank you.
So what about just one thing? Do you think that you didn't mention writers I know? So you mentioned some stories that I didn't know. So I think that if you are doing creative writing, so there will be, in any case, models and so on. So what could we read before you publish your?
There's actually quite a lot. There's a really nice Philip K. Dick story called Oh, never mind the Wub. No, it's not called that. It's called something to do with the Wub, and it's about them going to an alien planet and finding this super intelligent pig, and them trying to overcome their need to want to kill this pig, and it tells them all sorts of philosophical thoughts. You'd actually really like it. Maybe I'll send you a link
Yes.
to that. So.
I should have everything of Dick, but this story, I don't know. So Dick, for example, is one of
and
the...
some also good, really good Ursula Le Guin stuff if you want to sort of go in sort of easy, and then you can start to pick up these slightly stranger ones that I've been reading.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you again.